Welcome to the Film Illiterates podcast, your home for uninformed, unfiltered, ill-advised movie talk. As always, I'm Joe Campbell, and joining me today, as always, are Alex Patton.
Hello.
And Nathan Stone.
Splendiferous, I must say, oh chap.
Oh god.
Oh my gosh, I will not be doing this in a British accent because I will offend so many people.
Well, I mean, at this point, I don't know if you can offend anyone else than this movie has already, because, my god, I've never seen such an insult to a boys' academy before.
If I could pull off a killer Christopher Lee accent, I absolutely would. Unfortunately, I can't.
You cannot.
So, today is my turn to pick a movie, and I picked the 1994 Justin Hardy movie, A Feast at Midnight, starring, well, I guess not starring Christopher Lee, but he's the person of note in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely the reason why we picked this movie in the first place, huh?
Exactly, which I will get into all that, why I picked this movie. But before we get into all of that, let's talk about what we've watched on our own. I'll kick us off this week, since it was my pick this week. So I'm going to talk about, I watched the 4K Blu-ray of Psycho, the quote-unquote uncut version of the film. I'm talking about the 1960 original by Alfred Hitchcock, by the way, not the...
Oh, not the one I watched.
Yeah, we're not talking about the Gus Van Sant one with Vince Vaughn, and yeah.
I still think that was actually a pretty decent movie, a pretty decent remake, if you ask me.
Oh, okay.
Alex coming in with all the hot takes today.
Pretty much.
It wasn't bad is what I'm saying. It wasn't as bad.
Joe, I do have a question. So you said you're watching the director's uncut version. Did they cut anything out from the original theatrical release?
So everyone's been talking about how the uncut version with extra stuff added into it was released. I think it was last year is when I picked up this Blu-ray set.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, there's no real reason to get hyped up about this. In fact, I don't even really see any reason to include two different cuts of the movie. The number of differences come out to maybe a couple seconds worth of footage. And we're talking about an extra half-second shot of Marion Crane, like, starting to take off her bra, and an extra couple of seconds of Norman's hands covered in blood. Like little things like that. You know, a couple extra knife stabs towards the end.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So not like just like different like cuts of the shower scene because they got a little bit of nudity or anything like that. It's just like those little details.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there might be a couple extra frames in the shower scene, but I mean, me having seen the movie so many times in its original version, I could barely tell the difference watching the uncut version. So it's.
But you're gonna get that one person, the big Alfred Hitchcock fan, who's gonna like do a side-by-side comparison, frame for frame, and be like, it's a few seconds off.
Actually, it's this and that.
Yeah.
I need that extra couple seconds of back nudity in the movie.
Oh my god.
I will say, if you are going to watch the movie for the first time, might as well watch the uncut version. I mean, it's this exact same movie, just with a little ever so slightly more edgier. But it's Psycho. It's an excellent, wonderful movie. We've talked about Psycho and its sequels many times over the course of the YouTube channel. So top-notch Hitchcock, still my favorite of his movies.
Absolutely. Then
I got recently the Blu-ray distributor Vinegar Syndrome. They have several partner labels where they I believe they help release Blu-rays from other companies, and they released a 2018 movie called Prospect.
Oh, I have heard about Prospect.
Yeah, so this is like a big fancy 4K special box set Blu-ray with tons of bonus features. I was excited for this one, though, because I actually watched this at the Seattle International Film Festival back in 2018 when it first came out. This was it's like an indie sci-fi movie shot up here in my neck of the woods in the Pacific Northwest. Actually, it was shot in the Hoh Rainforest, which I've been camping in several times before, so that was pretty exciting to see that in a sci-fi movie.
Yeah. So Joe, kind of a funny thing is, I actually was following the guys who made this. I think it's the Cadwell brothers.
Well,
Uh,
they're not brothers. It's Christopher Caldwell and
mhm.
Zeke Earl. I believe they're friends who met in film school.
Sorry, you're right. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, I actually followed way back another short film that they had done. I think to get money and distribution for this, called In the Pines. And one thing I liked about that is one, yes, they make great use of the Washington location and just the landscape for the production value of what they're going for. But two, it's their take on sci-fi and how minimalistic they get with their concepts, but still bring out the stakes of a good storytelling. And I think one of the short films that they did called In the Pines, about a girl who gets abducted by aliens without ever showing a single alien on screens.
Hmm.
It has an interesting effect on you. And I kind of was seeing like the talent behind these guys. And I did see Prospect, and yeah, Prospect was quite unique in its own way.
Yeah, so for those who haven't seen Prospect, just a brief synopsis: a teenage girl and her father travel to a remote alien island, aiming to strike it rich. They've secured a contract to harvest a large deposit of the elusive gems hidden in the depths of the moon's toxic forest. But there are others roving the wilderness, and the job quickly devolves into a fight for survival. Forced to contend not only with the forest's other ruthless inhabitants, but with her own father's greed-addled judgment, the girl finds she must carve her own path to escape. This one also notably co-stars Pedro Pascal,
Yeah.
pre-Mandalorian.
Yep, right before he was like a big name, and it was kind of like I was like revisiting that again. I'm like, oh yeah, hey, it's Pedro, Mandalorian dude.
So I haven't gone through all the bonus features, but I was watching an interview with the directors, kind of a retrospective interview, and they were talking about how they made a lot of comparisons to Star Wars, in that they kind of wanted to make this feel like this belonged in a bigger, very diverse world with different kinds of cultures and different. You don't see aliens, but you see people in different kinds of suits and different kinds of traditions. You kind of get glimpses of. There's tons of little background details in the spaceship. Just like things on the wall and little details in their suits, and everyone has kind of very different suits to suit their own backgrounds and personalities.
Yeah, that is one thing I did like about this is like I don't know, I can't remember exactly what budget they were going for, but I know it was very small, and they did mention that before. Like they really wanted to kind of show off this universe without getting too far into their budget, and a lot of just like those little details you mentioned, Joe, is like something they brought to the table. Is like this is a creative storytelling element.
Yeah, so I would highly recommend checking this out. It is just kind of like a quieter, almost kind of a frontier type story. Just this girl and her father on this planet. They run
Yeah.
into bandits and they're prospecting for these gems, and it's not like a tension filled thrill ride or anything. It is kind of a quieter, more downbeat movie, but it's got some
Yeah.
fantastic performances. It does a lot with a small budget, so I highly recommend checking out Prospect.
It's got my interest if you're saying it's more of like a quieter, downbeat kind of thing. I like the poster for it. Looks pretty rad too.
Yeah, it's more of I would almost say it's kind of like a space western kind of.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah.
I'm interested.
So last thing I'll talk about briefly here is I finally watched Raya and the Last Dragon.
I want to get your hot take on this movie.
I thought it was fine. I honestly don't have very strong opinions about it either way. I don't have any real complaints. I don't have anything really to praise super strongly about it. I felt like it came in, it told this story fine. And when it finished, I felt satisfied, but I didn't feel blown away. I kind of feel like with modern day Disney movies, I personally think that the height of current animated Disney is Tangled. I think that one has pretty much everything I want in these kinds of movies, with the humor and the character building and the action all mixed in perfectly well. The Frozen films, at their best, they're top-notch Disney. They're better than anything recently in Disney. But I also have some really big complaints about the new Frozen movies. This one just kind of fell in like, that was pretty cool. That was pretty fun. I enjoyed it. What is it? I think Awkwafina, who voices the dragon, I found her excruciatingly grating at first, but then her character kind of became more interesting and less annoying as the movie went on.
Yeah, she kind of grows on to you over time, and I can see what she's doing. She's trying to, at least from what I remember, like when my brother and I saw this, one thing that we were pointing out is like we see her trying to do her own Robin Williams take on the genie with this dragon, like her just trying to play along with the story, but infuse her sense of humor and her banter and her just ad lib a little bit here and there. It's kind of like, lightning never will strike twice in the same movie, but it's like I could see that going on, and I thought she added some interesting stuff to it. But one thing I do kind of agree with you, Joe, is that yes, Tangled is probably the pinnacle of best, Disney animation storytelling. And this could have, like, if this had come out like right around that same time, like maybe 5 or 7 years earlier, it probably would have been a much more of an impact, or people would be more blown away. But you're right. Today, I think we've seen too much to kind of like compare it to. So it's like, it wasn't bad, but you're right. Didn't leave me like ecstatic or anything.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed seeing the Eastern influences in this movie, from everything from the designs down to the fight sequences too, which is a lot of fun. As since I've been watching a lot of Hong Kong action films recently.
Right. One thing I did like, and maybe I don't know if you have anything to comment, is Raya's character, how she is a bit more complex. That she doesn't come off as like, this very wholesome Mary Sue or anything like that. She's got some baggage, and she's got some issues she's trying to deal with in her, quest and her journey. And it's something she has to kind of overcome. So I kind of like how Disney's going in a bit more of that grittier direction with their character development.
Yeah, absolutely. People listening to this podcast now may think that I waited till now to watch Raya because it just recently, like within the past week, it was added to Disney Plus for free. This is actually not true. I went to the local theater to watch this a couple days before it hit Disney Plus without realizing it was coming to Disney Plus. So I'm glad I accidentally ended up seeing this on the big screen instead of at home on my smaller screen, which I probably would have waited if I had remembered it was coming to Disney Plus so soon.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting. Like, people are kind of like doing almost like coin flips at this point. It's like, all right, Disney Plus at home, or should we go to see the movie theaters? But I will agree with you, Joe. Seeing this on the big screen was a better payoff.
Oh, absolutely. So that's what I got. Nate, what did you watch this week?
Not too much. One of the things I've been kind of like revisiting is actually a lot of the old Disney animation classics, since, we were just talking about Disney animation. And in one era I'm looking at specifically was what they call the Bronze Age of Disney animation. So this is like between 1977 to 1989, I believe, where you had a lot of just kind of more of these smaller stake rudimentary animations coming out. I think, a couple that like fall in that ballpark are Fox and the Hound, The Rescuers, Aristocrats. But the two that I was actually focusing on recently was The Great Mouse Detective and Oliver and Company. And I was just like revisiting both of those films, also because I like The Great Mouse Detective. I thought this was, and looking at it again, I keep forgetting I think they had plans of doing a lot more. They were hoping there'd be a spinoff or a sequel, because it starts off with the adventures of the Great Mouse Detective. So it implies that there was going to be multiple stories that they were going to do. I can't remember if this one bombed at the box office. I know a lot of Disney films were not doing well at that time, right before the Disney Renaissance, and that made a comeback. But I do remember just liking The Great Mouse Detective overall. I thought the writing was really good. I liked how they were doing parallels with the Sherlock Holmes kind of London storyline going on, while still taking it, making it kid friendly. But I think another thing I really liked about this movie is it goes back to the stakes. The main villain, Ratigan, played excellently by Vincent Price, is just delightful to watch. But when he does that 180 and goes full beast mode, then you realize, okay, stakes are increased and there's danger now. And I don't know, I really like it when there is danger involved for these kids' movies, where there is a sense of, okay, someone can die. There's no coming back from this.
Yeah.
It just because it just makes it better. And I don't know. I don't think Rescuers Down Under is in this same like group of animation, but that was another one I revisited, and that's another good example of there are huge stakes. There is death involved, and I don't know. I kind of like it when animation does go in that direction. It's good.
Oh yeah, Rescuers Down Under is absolutely up there as one of my favorite Disney animated films of all time. I feel like the Great Mouse Detective, it has kind of been relegated to being a Disney cult film of sorts, like up there with Black Cauldron, in that it has a very strong fan base, but it's not one of the more mainstream movies that a lot of people think about all the time.
Exactly, yeah. And that's another thing with like the Bronze Age is like there are those several other films which, there is a cult following for them. Like I was looking at Oliver and Company, not necessarily a great film, but I know like people who love New York, who like Billy Joel, who was a huge influence for the music in that movie, really dig that. But aside from that, it's not necessarily the best movies. But this was a time when Disney was trying to do stuff differently, try different things, not necessarily always be in the fantasy route. So it was kind of just interesting revisiting that. And then the last thing I saw was a Blake Edwards film. This was one that he did like right in between after getting off of the Pink Panther franchise and right before he was doing Victor Victoria. And this is the movie called S.O.B. from 1981. A movie producer who made a huge flop tries to salvage his career by revamping his film as an erotic production where its family-friendly star takes her top off. And that, surprisingly, is also Julie Andrews. That's actually the one thing that most people remember about this movie is this is probably the one and only time you'll ever see Julie Andrews topless in one scene. But this is an interesting movie because, I don't know, are you guys familiar with Blake Edwards' comedy?
So as far as SOBs specifically, I actually heard this recently mentioned on the Warner Archive Blu-ray podcast, where I believe they released it on Blu-ray. So and hearing them talk about it made me think, man, I need to check out this movie. This sounds pretty awesome. So like this specifically has been on my radar recently, but I don't think I've watched a whole lot of Robert Altman movies in particular.
It's not Robert. Blake Edwards.
Blake Edwards. Sorry, I don't know why I said Robert Altman.
Well, I mean, we can watch MASH as well, But this one, I was surprised the cast in it has Richard Mulligan. It has William Holden actually in his last role. This was actually his last movie before he passed away. Robert Preston, and even I forgot about this, but Shelley Winters is in this as well. It's a big cast, like a lot of like A-list actors in this, but what I kind of think this is interesting about this movie is it is trying to be a basic satire at Hollywood in general. The BS and even just the shenanigans that a lot of producers go through just to get something made and the haggling that they do on a regular basis. But it has that Blake Edwards flair to it. Like, when his comedy just comes through, there's, I think one of the things that's a running gag is the producer has a hole in his second story floor and they just milk that to death, like, in the best Blake Edwards style. But the writing's good. The comedy is really good as well. And I don't know. I think, Joe, if you were interested in checking this out, I'd say give it a shot. Just know that it gets weird sometimes, but I think it's a good weird to show, this is like the level Hollywood goes to and how ridiculous it all sounds. I do remember it was actually looking back on it it was funny at parts, but it's also kind of grim and just like the black outlook on like Hollywood in general. Like the whole thing about them trying to take like this, kind of, I would say like Sally Duncan character that Julie Andrews is playing and kind of like showing how they're exploiting her in this level is kind of like, yeah, that does happen on a regular basis. And you can almost see that being mirrored in our society today. So
nice. Well, yeah, I'll definitely have to check this out sooner than later then to get caught up. And I was actually just looking through Blake Edwards' filmography. I haven't seen a single one of his movies now that when it comes down to it.
Holy Joe, we're gonna have to fix this.
I've got a blind spot I gotta fix.
Yeah, we're gonna fix this. And Alex, what about you?
All right, it's been a light week for me. One movie and then some games. But the one movie I watched is Iron Monkey from 1993. A martial artist and doctor steals from the corrupt authorities as a masked thief to give to the poor, while another martial artist doctor is forced to hunt him down. But a major threat unites them as a powerful and traitorous Shaolin monk takes over the authorities. It's a martial arts movie from 93, which, pulling it up on Letterboxd, I was surprised to be reminded that it was actually made in the early 90s because it doesn't look like it. All the action it's over the top and cheesy, which is kind of the draw of the whole thing. But for a movie made in the 90s, it's actually not bad. It looks good. It's got Donnie Yen in it too, which is, that's always fantastic. Having him in like anything is just a plus. And he's great in the movie. So
I'm actually watching the trailer right now, and it's funny how it not only it was distributed by Miramax, but I like how it says presented by Quentin Tarantino as like the big sell on it. I'm like, wow, it's got his stamp of approval on it. Interesting.
Actually, looking this up, this is from Yun Wu Ping. He's a big martial arts choreographer, but as directing wise, I know him as the guy who did Drunken Master, and most recently I watched The Magnificent Butcher with Sammo Hung. He did Wing Chun. He's done some pretty heavyweight martial arts action comedies, so I add this one to my my watch pile sooner than later too.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of looking at his filmography too, and you're right. He does have his finger in not only that, but it looks like a Kung Fu Hustle as well, which another great comedy martial artist film.
Oh yeah, and I believe he also did the choreography for a lot of mainstream, like big Hollywood movies, like The Matrix and stuff like that.
It says here additional crew, but he's in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. More or less, he was probably a stunt choreographer for that as well.
Yeah, and he directed the sequel. Give or take your thoughts on that.
We don't talk about that, Joe. We don't,
well, Iron Monkey has, you mentioned comedies. It does have a bit of comedy here and there, but I wouldn't say that's definitely not the main focus. It's definitely more of like the action and the drama. And then, yeah, like I said, the action is over the top. It is cheesy, but that's why you're watching it in the first place. If that's not your kind of thing, then just avoid this movie entirely, because that is what the movie is. The story is, works well enough.
Yeah,
I can't say too much about it because it's just simple. It's just overall, I wasn't too hyped on it. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the like over the top kind of like martial arts stuff. It could be interesting, but like when that's really all there is to the movie, it does get a bit boring, and that's mostly all there is to this movie. I can only watch it for so long and be kept interested if there's not that much else going on. And yeah, but like I said, if the cheesy over the top action stuff is your thing, then absolutely this would be a high recommendation for sure, because it's cool. But that's really the only movie that I've watched. Other than that, I will say I've still been playing a lot of Destiny. New season dropped a few weeks ago or so, and it started off to be a pretty good season, and then some more recent balance patches hit. Literally, what is today? Friday. It literally hit yesterday, which makes it even better. But the story for this season is actually pretty cool. It's essentially a group of one of the alien races that we've been fighting in the game since literally Destiny 1. It's a group of them are deciding to break away from... They essentially just want to help us, as like another enemy from the game has plunged the last city on Earth into darkness, and we have to look to this alien group called they're known by two names in the game. They're to most of people playing the game, they're called the Fallen. To themselves in their own language, it's the Elixni, and essentially we just have to try to work with them in order to stop the Vex overtaking the city and plunging it all into darkness and all that good stuff. But that's the basic idea for the season. What a lot of people didn't expect is there's it's season of racism, pretty much.
What?
So really?
All right, let me explain.
Well, no. I mean, I kind of like as what you were pitching. I was like, okay, is this going to try to combat racism and the whole PC involved in that? But
what happens is in bringing in like, I mean, like, and essentially we're working with our enemies, aside from the fact that these group of fallen, of these Elixni, have broken away and are under their own group. And so they're trying to help. And it's dealing with another one of the characters in the game, part of what's called the Future War Cult, essentially like a cult or like a faction in the game. And it turns out their leader is super racist towards them and doesn't want them in the city. And it literally is just like, now we're not only fighting the Vex, which is like the real enemy and what's like caused the last city on Earth to be like plunged into darkness, but we're literally fighting the Future War Cult leaders like racism against the Fallen.
It touches into that territory. It's like, okay.
Yeah. And like it's it was just so unexpected. It's a really interesting aspect to the story that that something that kind of thing hasn't really been done in Destiny before. I mean, in Destiny, it's really just, oh, this enemy faction is attacking us. Well, we gotta kill them and we gotta stop them. And now we're bringing into a lot of like different aspects of kind of the relationship between the humans and the fallen Elixir. It's really cool. It has a really interesting dynamic to the whole story, and I think really kind of what makes that's what makes this season unique as compared to other seasons.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, as of right now, is the online forum like getting a lot of flack or giving this game a lot of flack, or are they kind of actually coming
Oh,
to
no.
its defense and saying like, "Oh, we actually are glad that Disney's taking this kind of turn in its narrative, that it's deciding to go in this direction"?
I mean, I don't think anyone's as far as from what I see. I out of the main communities that Destiny has, Reddit community, Destiny the game is probably one of their largest outside of like individual Twitch streams and their own
League
communities
of Legends,
and whatnot.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I stay away from Destiny the game because there are a lot of idiots on that subreddit.
Well, in Reddit in general.
Reddit in general,
Yeah.
but really on r/DTG,
Mhm.
it can be pretty bad, and I just got tired of hearing people complain about stupid things. And anyway,
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't know if this
So-
was a stupid thing that they were like, attacking it for,
oh
but
no, I don't I don't think this is any sort of like people getting pissed off at Bungie for including this kind of thing in the game. I don't think I haven't seen anywhere that would say that. From mostly what I've been seeing is people hating the future war cult leader, and like it just essentially seems that people like the story. I
Mhm.
haven't seen any negativity about the story at all, so
Okay.
I think that's perfectly fine. I think what more people are interested in and pissed off about in Destiny is just the balancing of the game. And a few seasons ago, they introduced a new subclass for all the characters, which ended up being very overpowered in PvP. They've been putting a few tweaks here and there, but finally, a majority of those new subclasses, got a major nerf in the past, literally just yesterday in the most recent update. It sounds like they're getting onto a good track with at least balancing and whatnot, which is it's mostly been right. They are, and then they'll sometimes release something else that's stupidly broken. So that's just the way it works in literally in Destiny's history. But either way, to put a final note on it, I am enjoying the season. It's been fun. They brought back the first ever raid that they did in Destiny 1, and I had a blast playing that on day one, or trying to play it on day one, and playing it the first weekend it came out with my clan. It was just incredibly nostalgic, and I was entirely thrilled with having it back in the game.
Nice.
But that's what I've been up to. That's about it.
And with that, we will now move into our main topic of discussion, which is 1994's A Feast at Midnight.
Why are you such a spaz? How come you're so greedy?
Magnus Gove's new school. The new boy wasn't quite to his taste. His teacher was a crusty old dinosaur.
Why do they call you Raptor?
And the other boys
What do you think makes you so special, maggot?
were rotten to the core.
Can't do that. Just have.
What he needed was a recipe for success.
We are a family. You need to earn your place, though.
You go to cricket? No, I've never played. Well, what do you play? I like to cook.
A way to show everyone what he's made of.
Out of bounds to all boys.
What I'd like right now is a giant ice cream cone.
Yeah.
With vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate on the top.
Yeah.
And 4 flakes.
And a few friends hungry for some fun.
Like a secret feasting club. Quick, hide!
Now they're cooking up trouble.
What else can you make? Biscuits? Biscuits? What are you doing?
Getting into hot water. And putting a little spice into their lives.
chair for our guest of honor.
What on earth?
It's the best birthday I've ever had.
A Feast at Midnight. A film with all the right ingredients.
A new student at a British public school forms a secret society centered around cooking and midnight feasting with other school misfits and outcasts. A Feast at Midnight is a 1994 movie directed by Justin Hardy and starring Freddie Finlay and Christopher Lee and a bunch of other people.
Yeah, a bunch of other British actors. Yeah.
Robert Hardy plays the headmaster. I feel like I've seen that guy somewhere before. It's probably popped up in other stuff that I've seen in the past. Oh, Harry Potter.
Yeah, he's in Harry Potter. I'm like, come on.
Hey, I'm not a pothead, so.
Oh, which, you know, honestly, Freddie in this looks like he's pretty much stoned half of the time. So.
Oh my gosh.
So I picked this movie exclusively because it was on my Letterboxd watch list. And it was on my Letterboxd watch list because the poster shows Christopher Lee kind of leaning over like a dinosaur with his shadow is a velociraptor, and it's kind of dark, and he's leaning over. There's this kid, the silhouette of this kid in this doorway. So, and the tagline on this poster that I saw says, "A 500-year-old school, a prehistoric form master, and a 10-year-old chef." And I thought, this looks awesome. This looks like Z grade schlocky, 90s, maybe sci-fi horror kind of thing with Christopher Lee. And I'm thinking, Christopher Lee, he played Dracula, and he did all these classic horror films. This is gonna be great.
That is not what we got. That is not what we got.
This is a 90s British family movie about boys at a boarding school forming a secret cooking club. That's the story.
That's it. There's nothing else about that movie.
There is no sci-fi horror angle. So I guess I'll get started with general first impressions. Me going into this movie, I started it within the first couple minutes. I realized, oh, this isn't the movie I thought it was at all. And so I kind of had to rewire my brain to get on this movie's new track. I'm like, okay, we're talking about family-friendly 90s movie here. Kids at a boarding school. I was kind of reminded of M. Night Shyamalan's Wide Awake, which is a 90s movie that he made. I think it was before he did The Sixth Sense, which is also about a kid at like a religious school, kind of. It's one of those kind of coming of age type movies. So once I got on that wavelength, I'll be honest, I kind of enjoyed this movie. I didn't love it, but I kind of enjoy it. I mean, for what it does, I think it does it perfectly, serviceably well. It's got these kids getting into all sorts of shenanigans. The quote unquote dinosaur angle comes in with all the kids call Christopher Lee, who's the headmaster. They call him the Raptor.
Yeah, but that was something I was going to save to talk about. But the whole reason, why I think the Raptor is on here is because, yes, it's a nickname they gave to him because I think this is like a year after Jurassic Park just first came out.
Yes, it is.
And oh my gosh, all the references to that movie, like all the little like Easter eggs and like, oh, we're recreating the kitchen scene from Jurassic Park is cringy. It is so cringy. Very cringy.
I'll be honest, as soon as I saw that they were referencing Jurassic Park, because they referenced Jurassic Park a couple of times in the movie early on.
Oh yeah, more than they should.
Yeah, but early on, one of the people asked, oh, why do they call you the Raptor? And he says, oh, after that dinosaur movie, referencing Jurassic Park, and they redo the when the liquid making circles when one of the teachers is approaching, and they do that kind of thing. So as soon as I saw that they were doing this repeatedly, I was waiting for them to do a Raptor in the kitchen scene with Christopher Lee, and I was not disappointed.
Yeah, it's just they could have done a lot more with that if that's like what they were going to go with. Instead of like, oh, he's tapping his pipe on the metal, and that's like a Raptor's hook.
I laughed so hard when he blew smoke on the glass onto the kitchen.
Yeah, like I said. But that for me, I guess it could have been done better if that's what they were going for. If that was the angle,
were you expecting him to jump up on the counter?
So Joe, if it's okay, I'm gonna go into my impressions when I saw this movie, because I thought for a specific reason. Like, yes, I had the same kind of impression that it was going to become something else halfway through. That, okay, let's get through 40 minutes of this or an hour of just these boys doing, these stupid shenanigans, and it just showing the cringy lifestyle of their academy life. And then somewhere this whole reveal of, oh, the reason why this academy is so special is because, yes, it is harboring people who turn into dinosaurs. And I was kind of hoping it was going to do that. And it never did. And I thought for some reason, okay, let's build up the antics of this whole Jurassic Park reference, because maybe there might be some weird, fun family sci-fi element that they'll bring into it. And it just never delivered. And I guess that's why I don't like this movie at all.
You see, I think you and I kind of reached the same point in this movie where we kind of realized, oh, this isn't the movie I thought it was. Only I think I kind of hit that immediately, and I was able to rewire my brain fast enough that I was able to enjoy it for what it was, not expecting it to be something else. Whereas it sounds like you didn't hit that realization till much later into the movie.
Well, I guess I was trying to give myself the benefit of the doubt. I was trying to hope, okay, maybe they're going to surprise us at some point and it's just going to do a 180 and then it'll be worth it. So I gave it that benefit of the doubt of like, okay, maybe at the hour mark, maybe at the hour and a half mark. And then when I realized, no, it's 2 hours in, we're never going to hit that point. I'm done. I'm tapping out. And I think for the rest of the movie, I was just like on autopilot, just like, I want this to be over.
So, Alex, what was your experience watching this? Because I think you and I both watched this at pretty much around the same time, just within the past couple hours before recording this.
Yeah, literally. I didn't know. Looking at the poster, you kind of get an idea in your head, and like you said, it's not the movie it kind of sets itself up to be. Though, like you, Joe, I also very quickly realized, oh, okay, this is the direction they're taking. It's a family-friendly kids movie. All right, I can get on board with this. And while it's not anywhere near as interesting as I'd maybe hoped, I at least could kind of gauge my expectations and just relax a bit more and kind of just take it for what it was. Overall, I thought it was like, it's a family-friendly kids movie. There's not really a whole lot to it. It's simple. It's cheesy. It's kind of boring if you're not watching it with your family,
right? Or at that appropriate age to kind of get on board with this, which this was something I looked up on this movie. This movie got a theatrical release, and it does not feel like it's a movie made for theaters. It's like a TV movie. So why distribute it in theaters?
I can see this being put in theaters. I mean, we do get a lot of these, or I mean, maybe not so much now anymore, but in the 90s and 2000s, there were some of these kind of smaller family-friendly movies about, I don't want to say rebellious kids, but kids going through these kind of coming of age scenarios where they're up against the authority figures.
Mm-hmm.
I think at a certain point, I kind of want to say invested in the story, but I was kind of interested in seeing like, okay, well, which direction are they going to take this next? Of course, they're going to have to go through all the tropes of they got to rope the girl into it because she feels betrayed by the boys, and she's also Christopher Lee's daughter, and so there's a little bit of a rebellious angle with her against him. None of it was terribly quote unquote interesting, but it was well executed enough that, I actually was watching this with my kids. They were around. I mean, I wasn't watching it with them, but I had it playing. And about halfway through, some of them actually sat down and just kind of watched, the second half of the movie with me. And they were kind of, they didn't really know exactly what was going on, but they were interested in some of the directions they took, like the whole scene where the kid goes into town to get some jam, and he ditches school for 45 minutes. And they were interested in like, oh, he's jumping onto the milk cart. That's kind of an interesting little set piece. And oh, now he's going up to the store. And so, I mean, there were moments that worked in here. I will say there were set pieces that were more well executed than I think I expected them to be, because there are a lot of dry moments in this movie. But then you do have stuff like they do a Mission Impossible riff for no reason.
Yeah.
Right. I guess for me, this is just something I'll say. Like, you kind of mentioned it, they take advantage of those set pieces and what they're doing. I almost was kind of hoping, like, I saw what they were doing with like, okay, we're going to bring all these culture references into this. We're going to bring Jurassic Park, we're going to bring Mission Impossible, and, still kind of like keep to this, passion about them wanting to be cooking, like almost kind of like doing Dead Poet Society, kind of like it, but just for like boys in elementary school. I just felt like there could have been more that they've done with it, and it could have been executed better with a better punch. Like there were some transitions which felt so abrupt and so quick that I don't think it took time for anyone to get like the joke of the scene. So that was just my frustration with the movie. And maybe for me, I just didn't feel like the director, Justin Hardy, had a strong vision of what he was trying to do. He was just like, oh, well, let's put all these references in here and maybe there might be some humor in there. And it's like, I don't know if it was enough for me.
Yeah, I was surprised by how many references to other movies there were in here. And it kind of reminded me of modern day movies that tend to just kind of throw a bunch of pop culture references into them, especially animated movies today. Mm-hmm. I mean, they worked for me for the most part, though, because the joke wasn't always, oh, we're just referencing this. No, the joke was, I mean, for instance, with the, Mrs. What's her face? Miss Plunder.
Mm-hmm.
The whole joke with her being the T-Rex was that the kids were cooking, when they shouldn't have been in the kitchen, mm-hmm. and they hear her coming and they think, oh no, we got to get out of the way. And they do kind of play that up with the reoccurring dinosaur angle where it's, oh no, the dinosaur is coming. Now we all got to hide. And then the flip side of that joke, I mean, the punchline is that it actually isn't her coming into the kitchen. It's the what is it? The
it's Robert Hardy. Yeah, the headmaster Robert Hardy doing peanut butter.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Coming in, who is a much less threatening figure than Miss Plunder or Christopher Lee's character. Mm-hmm. So I mean, like it's. I felt like the references at least served a little bit more of a narrative purpose than a lot of modern day movies. But I was surprised because they felt like they came out of a different movie when they came into this film.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And maybe that was another reason why, as I kind of saw these references popping up, I'm like, okay, is this going to snowball into some kind of a big climax? And I guess that was another thing that frustrated me about it is that there was no big, I wouldn't say setup or payoff to the whole secret society. Because honestly, I don't think there was anything that there's nothing that really went with that.
Really, no.
Well, the whole culmination was the birthday party.
Yeah. But then I guess that's where I felt the movie was kind of sloppy with its narrative. Like it felt like, okay, this is the boy's journey to being accepted by this other group for his passion of cooking, and then it kind of forces itself to be like, no, it's about the daughter being rebellious and going off on her own. I'm like, well, when did that transition come in?
Yeah
So it felt like, I guess that was my problem with this movie, is it feels like the director writer of this, he had a good idea, he pitched it around, but executing it or knowing exactly what the focus should be is something he could have probably done better at it. And maybe that's also because this was a smaller stakes family pop culture reference movie, which those tend to be pretty cheap. They tend to be really quick. And I think this was trying to piggyback on a lot of the movies at the time before they missed the boat. So it definitely had that vibe for me.
Yeah, I feel like one reason why they might have thrown in quite a bit of the pop culture stuff is just the kids will get laughs out of it and whatnot. Just watching, kids their age snaking around in this high profile school and making food and all that stuff like that. Meanwhile, the parents will pick up on the references and whatnot and kind of get a little bit of enjoyment out of that kind of thing. So that might be why they referenced it so much. Might also be just trying to capitalize on literally what's popular during that time, but could also be that.
One plot point that I was a little bit disappointed didn't go further was the rivalry between the main kid and the kind of rival straight A student at the school.
Yeah,
because I think it was a problem they had where they initially wanted to set up the main character kid to be a bit of an outsider, to be bullied upon. So they set up this other rival kid who's kind of a bit of a jerk to him, and they're kind of going at each other, setting up a rivalry between the two of them. But then once the secret society gets set up, and then the movie kind of pivots to Christopher Lee's daughter as being a more major player, the movie just kind of forgets about the other kid until I guess the rival kid gets bullied at one point, and he just kind of fades out of the movie.
Yeah, like I
Mhm.
said, that there wasn't a very strong transition for that storyline and where that was going. And I don't know, maybe it's like they just were juggling too much, or he just wanted to put too much into it. And
Yeah, I think that that character served his purpose fairly early on in the movie,
mm-hmm.
and then once he had served his purpose, they just didn't really know what to do with him. And I would say, well, we should have added a satisfying conclusion to that rivalry. But then the movie's already like an hour and 50 minutes long.
Yeah, that was one thing about me I was a little frustrated with is like, there's so much filler in this movie that they could have cut down quite a bit. And maybe that's something I kind of was a little bit frustrated too about this movie is I felt like it was trying to just give a portrait of what dormitory life for like boys at an English grammar school were like. And it spent a lot of time just focused on that, them doing their exercises, them getting schooled by the professors, them, in their master suites, them studying and what it was like during vacations. It's like all that stuff could have been easily cut out. Like we're not doing Harry Potter. This isn't Hogwarts. But it felt like, okay, if that was part of like why they wanted to do this was to show that kind of life in England, maybe save it for a different movie, or I don't know, maybe focus that or make that part of the story a bit more, which it just didn't.
Well, we certainly couldn't cut out Christopher Lee getting hit in the crotch.
No,
Oh my
which
God.
let me say something about that scene. Early on in that scene, it's like what, a 5-minute scene of them just playing cricket, and it sets up that he forgot to put his crotch guard in there, and we just know, we know that the joke is coming. It's coming, and at that point you're just like, can we get to the joke? But when it still happens, it's hilarious to watch.
It is so good. Like,
I found myself chuckling. I'm like, he got kicked.
What did you guys think of Christopher Lee in this movie?
it seemed like he did not want to really be there.
Yeah. I just had to think like poor Christopher Lee, like how much was he desperate for work that much to be in this movie to get hit in the ball with a cricket ball?
Yeah, it didn't seem like his character wanted to be at the school, and it didn't seem like he wanted to be in the movie. So
yeah, exactly. And that was another thing I got frustrated with, because Joe, you were talking about how the story does become about his relationship with his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't feel like none of them were there. None of them had that chemistry as like a father-daughter relationship. And that was something that frustrated me too, to the point where I was like, oh, this movie needs to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I'll agree that their relationship was undercooked and should have been developed a little bit better. In fact, I think the daughter character should have been set up earlier as a bigger character, and I think her relationship with Christopher Lee should have been better established, because I never really got the impression of what the relationship was. In fact, I think you barely even see them in the same room together until the third act.
Yep.
I mean,
exactly.
Which is kind of sad, because their relationship becomes kind of the whole crux of the climax.
Mhm.
They do allude to it. I think she does like make an offhand comment about him that kind of alludes to it, but then it's just quickly kind of like swept under the rug, and they go back to, oh, the boys are making something in the kitchen again. So yeah, it really doesn't play as big of a part as it should have.
I mean, again, because of how big of a focus it becomes in the third act of the movie,
Mhm.
I could even see a version of this movie with the footage they have if you just restructured it a little bit to make her a bit of a bigger character beforehand, because until that point, her, they set her up initially as, oh, she's going to be the girl, has father issues, and she's going to get in with the boys group. But then, the boys just end up being scumbags to her fairly early on, and it isolates her for a good chunk of the movie, where she does just become another grown-up foil for the kids
Mhm.
for a lot of the movie, until, again, they rope her in the second half of the movie. But at that point, you've already done the damage where this character has been alienated from the audience even, and so it's a little bit too little too late when they try to bring her in again at the end.
Yeah, now that you kind of mentioned that, like, I bet if they had a better editor or just someone else in the cutting room just to, change a lot of the scenes around or include different footage, maybe this movie would have pulled off a better story or execution. But I guess that's where it falls short, is it doesn't know what it's trying to cut together. It's like, is this Freddie Finlay's like, journey of, being accepted by the boys? Is this the daughter's story? And I think, doing a little bit of cutting or recutting would have saved this movie from a lot of just drudgery. I'll say this: the one storyline I felt could have gone somewhere, and I'm sad that it didn't, was the chef.
Oh, I love that character.
He was good.
Okay, so like the whole thing where he's putting like dried up pasta to like, check to see who's opening my cabinet doors. I'm like, okay, there's something here. Why can't we focus on him, or him kind of like setting up like, I will catch these boys in the act? And that could have been like the big finale of this movie of, him getting egg on his face and the boys winning and, pulling off the best dessert, whatever. But that didn't go anywhere either. So
The scene where he's sitting in the fridge, I laughed out loud when he popped out.
That was a good scene.
Yeah.
The one scene he had where he actually not, he doesn't really help them, but he finally catches them in the act, and then he's just like, oh, you actually are making good food. That was a good scene, and I wanted more of that. It would have been cool if maybe he had found out about them earlier on, and then secretly helped them, make this master plan for the ultimate birthday party at the end.
Yeah, you see, that actually was, you bring this up. That was something I was hoping at some point to
Mhm.
happen. Like, not only just the kids, getting on board with this, but some of the adults or some of the headmasters getting on board with this as well. So it becomes more like, it's not just the kids who want something different. Everybody else at the school wants something different. And yeah, something like that would have been great if all the adults were getting on board with it. Because that was another thing, is that the headmaster was such a nice little, bumbling fellow, quite the opposite of Christopher Lee. And even he was like, we must have the kids eat healthy food. I'm like, really? You're going to ride that stake to the ground? Okay.
Yeah, and then he's the one hiding, what was it, Claire in literally a safe, and
Yeah.
sneaking peanut butter sandwiches in every once in a while. So it would have been cool to have that his kind of character turn around and start, I think one of the complaints I would have with it is just there's very little everything that is that the kids do in the movie doesn't seem to have that much of an impact. And I guess we can kind of get into spoiler territory if you're really afraid of being spoiled for this movie.
I don't think you're going to be spoiling too much. So
The end of it is that the main kid leaves the school and goes back and lives with his father so he can cook more and stuff like that. And sure, that's cool. And the kids kind of turn around on the bully Bathurst, and Christopher Lee and Miss Plunder end up getting married, and Christopher Lee's daughter ends up leaving the school and goes and traveling. And I guess that's for the main characters of the movie. Sure, there is a bit of almost resolution, or what the kids have done does have some sort of impact on them, but as far as the rest of the school and everything like that, it doesn't. It literally just seems to are continuing on, and nothing's changed and whatnot. And it would have been nicer to see a little bit more impact outside of just the main core cast.
right. Yeah. I mean, I guess one of the movies, and I brought this up earlier, is that I kind of realized, okay, so this is what the movie is. It's not about, a school that's hiding, secrets, and, professors are doing weird stuff at night. No, this is literally Dead Poet Society, but they're cooking. And even with Dead Poet Society, yes, the constraints, or even just the scale or the stakes of that, are within that group of boys in that university. But even so, you see the growth, you see the arc that happens, and that what changes do come from that benefits everyone one way or another, even those who were all against change. So I don't know. It felt like that was another movie I kind of was making a note of, okay, I can see them trying to do references to this, but Dead Poet Society does this better.
But is Dead Poet Society a family movie?
Well, no, not. I mean, I guess it is. I guess it is. I don't know. I saw it at a young age, and
I mean, you could probably make the argument that it could or couldn't be, but this is very wholly a family movie. I guess maybe that's what they were going for.
This is baby's first Dead Poet Society.
I don't know. There was actually a couple of scenes. Well, actually, there's that one scene where the daughter is, getting dressed, and she's just looking at herself in the mirror. I felt a little uncomfortable. I was like, is this in a family movie? What the hell?
Yeah. I will say, and I'm sure the intent wasn't there, but there were a couple of moments that felt, for a family movie, felt a little more lurid than they needed to be regarding that character, which again may boil down to the fact that her character wasn't as developed as she should have been to begin with, and maybe they could have used more of a woman's influence in the writing of the screenplay.
Mhm.
Yeah, because honestly, I don't think she would have gone through the trash like that just to get a couple of cookies again. Because when that came up, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I like the whole joke of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna toss it into the waste bin because since I'm working at the nurse office. But then it's like it's been 2 days. It's been in the trash,
Yeah.
and you're digging through it just to what?
And then she eats the cookie that's been in the trash for 2 days. It's just
Yeah.
like, oh no, don't do that.
Hey, don't knock trash cookies until you've tried them, okay?
Yes.
I will indeed not.
Well, then I'll let you go raid the dumpster, Joe, to find those trash cookies, and you eat them all because I'm not part of that society.
Well, while you're there, you might want to dig this movie out too.
Oh, burn.
Do you guys want to jump into final thoughts?
Sure.
All right, I'll kick us off here. So, I mean, I didn't really talk much about Christopher Lee's performance, but I thought it was fine. If you're, I mean, he's certainly no stranger to garbage movies, and I wouldn't call this a garbage movie. I felt like this was a perfectly okay little 3-star 90s family movie. Christopher Lee is fun to watch. The Jurassic Park references are fun to see. The movie is a little bit longer than it needs to be. It's a little bit poorly structured. But for me, sitting down and watching it with some of my older kids, they were semi into it, and I was semi into it. So I would give a mild recommendation for A Feast at Midnight. And my movie moment that I will pick out, it has to be the raptor in the kitchen sequence. That was the sequence that I was waiting for them to do when I knew that it was going to involve Jurassic Park references, Christopher Lee as a raptor, and there was a kitchen. I knew they had to do the kitchen sequence, and they did not fail to deliver, in my opinion, with Christopher Lee tapping on the door, walking down. They recreate a couple of shots from the kitchen sequence from Jurassic Park. So that is absolutely the highlight of the movie for me.
All right.
Fair. All right. I'll go. The movie's okay. As a family movie, it's okay. It's okay. Like this is something I don't think I would really mind putting on for like my family or something like that. It's just very simple, easy to watch. There's not much going on really, and it does have its moments here and there. I didn't even, like, to be honest, pick up on most of the references outside of like I think like the Mission Impossible reference. But overall, yeah, very, very light recommendation. If you're kind of unsure of a family movie to watch and you happen across this, sure, why not throw it on? It's just something to kind of pass the time. But outside of that, I don't think it's really that, like, any other situation, it's not worth watching.
It's not about Christopher Lee turning into a dinosaur, which is very disappointing.
Yeah, it is very, very much disappointing. So
yeah, that was a bummer, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But for my movie moment, it was probably the kid breaking out of the school and going into town, and I thought that was pretty cool. It was just a cool sequence, just to get away from the kind of mundane scenes of being in the school and just kind of freshen up the scenery a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Is that the only scene that we actually leave the school grounds? Now that I think about it,
I believe so,
Yes.
because everything else just takes place on the campus grounds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So neat.
Okay. Well, as you guys probably have heard, I've ripped a hole into this movie. I do not like this movie at all.
high recommendation from Nate.
Yep.
Yes.
4.5 out of 5.
A high recommendation to watch other movies like Hope and Glory, or even just Dead Poet Society, or just anything else besides this. Heck, I would even say go back, revisit Harry Potter if you want to get like life. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to say watch Paddington 2, because Paddington 2 is pretty much the same story, kind of, in a way, where, Paddington is able to transform the entire prison that he gets sent to.
What? Paddington goes to prison?
Oh, hell yeah.
Apparently, you guys have not seen this movie.
Oh, no, yeah. I love Paddington 2. Paddington 2 is excellent.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the Paddington series. I'm sorry.
No, okay, you're missing out then.
Oh
I'm going to
gosh,
say
Alex.
you are missing out. Yeah, I feel like you should watch these. But aside from that, I see what this movie's trying to do. I feel like if it had better focus, yes, it could have actually pulled off a lot of, higher feats than what it was trying to do. At the moment, it just feels like they're all messily strung together. And there's not a whole lot like that I feel like glues me to this movie. I want it to, but there was just nothing carrying me through. And I think all the pop culture references aren't enough for me to carry through this. And I'm not saying it'd be a disservice to show your family this, but it's like, I feel like there's other things out there worth watching. I don't say like my favorite scene, but it's a scene I think just sums up everything that I feel about this movie is the sequence when they're trying to get the society together, where they're, sending the cookies to everybody who they want to be included. And it just being so long and so drawn out and so awkward. They're giving cookies to boys on the toilet. And
that was a very strange scene.
Yeah. And I guess like that's not like a favorite scene, but it's a scene I feel like, okay, this sums up everything I feel about this movie on how cringy. And that's also the scene where they give the cookie to the daughter and she tosses it in the waste bin, which, I guess can drag onto her going into the trash later and digging it out. I'm like, so that's a scene I kind of feel like wasn't a favorite, but it's one I picked out as like, this is my feelings of the movie.
Yeah, actually, you make a very good point about the Paddington 2 comparison, Nate, because this whole movie is just a sequence from Paddington 2. So I mean, Paddington 2 did this entire movie in one entire sequence, and it did it much better with the whole prison food sequence. So,
now, granted, the Paddington 2, the advantage it has is CGI, and a lot of Paddington being a computer generated character that it can pull off a one take like that. We're talking 1994, which, obviously they couldn't get the dinosaur raptors to be in this movie. Maybe that's one reason why they couldn't turn Christopher Lee into a raptor.
Nate is still very upset about Christopher Lee not turning into a dinosaur in this movie.
I'm sorry, because Joe, that poster was selling me on like, is this going to turn into a sci-fi fantasy family movie? Because I'm on board if it is, and it didn't.
Imagine if this movie, as is, just in the last 5 minutes, like after the pool party, he actually did turn into a raptor.
And I would have been on board with that. That would have made me go from like, okay, I hate this movie to I like this movie now. It would have been worth it.
That would have been From Dusk Till Dawn levels of genre change.
But the thing is, Dusk Till Dawn does it at the halfway point. And I wouldn't mind even if this gets into the last fraction of the movie. So anyway.
Anyway, that will do it for this episode of the Film Illiterates podcast. You can find all of our videos and podcast episodes on filmilliterates.com and youtube.com/filmilliterates. Nate, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me here at filmilliterates.com. I do these podcasts with these guys. I also did some videos with them in the past. I'm also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd under Nathan Stone.
Alex?
Watch our old videos. And then you can find me at Letterboxd, My Anime List, and Rate Your Music, all under the name Half Scrim, HALFSCRIM.
And you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd under Film Illiterates. Whose turn is it next, by the way, for a movie? I've lost track.
I don't remember either.
Well, if it's okay, guys, I'll jump on it. I think I actually have one I wanted us to do for a long, long time. And after seeing this movie, it made me think about this movie again. But I would like us to finally do our Battle of the Bands podcast. And what I was hoping we could do, if you guys are down for this, is review 2 movies and compare them. I'd like for us to watch Pink Floyd's The Wall and Tommy, both of the film versions.
Tommy?
Yeah.
I've not watched The Who's Tommy.
You guys will be in for a treat, but that's what we're going to do.
Awesome. So it'll be a very musical episode of the Film Illiterates podcast next time. In the meantime, keep watching movies and keep it easy.